Good morning, good morning. It's Wednesday, it's 9 o'clock, and here I am with Norma Talks, or Norma Talks Metaphysics. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about my tool that I've used for many years, the tarot. I was 20 years old when I was first introduced to the tarot. And I'm going to tell you the story of how this new technique of reading them was created. The gentleman I went to hear originally was a British medium. And I think I've told this story before, but there's a lot of new people, and they may not have heard it. And in the old days, actually, I ran across this a lot. The clairvoyants, the psychics that didn't use a tool like the tarot, used to look down upon us card readers. And he was very similar, but he had a heart attack. He was an older man. He had been a British psychic. He was living in Vancouver, BC, and he had a heart attack. And his friend, thinking he was doing him a favor, bought him a deck of tarot cards, which he literally threw across the room. But his guide came to him and said to him, "You're going to devise a new method of reading these." And so he settled down in his recovery, because in those days, that's how you recovered. You were in bed and resting. And he did devise a new way of reading them. And that's what I have utilized. I was in his very first class. I studied with him when he did classes off and on for 3 years. Now, what was it that it was different was that it was philosophical. It wasn't, this card means this, or this. It means, what is the philosophical element of how that works in life? And I'm forever, ever grateful that I had that beginning. I didn't have my head full of a whole lot of things of what they meant, but to explore, and I did. I explored over the years as to how they worked. Now, if you don't know the tarot or not familiar with it, there's 78 symbols, basically. The deck that I've always used is what we call the Rider-Waite deck. Arthur Edward Waite created the pictures with Pamela Coleman Smith, and there's a side story. The Pamela Coleman Smith did all the artwork for these, and died absolutely in poverty, was never really recognized. So as the years went by and I attended tarot conferences and things, very often they talked about that, how she was sort of cast aside, and yet she was the one that did the phenomenal pictures that we look at and utilize to this day. But now the deck has taken the basic Arthur Edward Waite deck is still the pictures. There's different colorings, there's different ways, but the philosophy in them is what I was given was really great. Now, 22 symbols are what we call the higher arcana cards. That's the spiritual laws and lessons of life. That's where a lot of the main things. Then the other 456 are 4 suits. Wands, how you think. Cups, how you feel. Swords, how you respond to life. And Pentacles, the material conditions of your life. The main element, excuse me here a sec, is really the higher arcana. The lower arcana fills in a lot of the why and how you're doing. But I'm just going to show you some of the symbols. This is number 1, the Magician. Everything is possible. You have all the keys. This is why it's easy when to teach how to read. And I've written 3 books on this subject. So and each one is a little bit different. It has the basics, but it takes a different slant. You've got the tools. And on this table here, he has the wands, the thinking, cups, the feeling, swords, the problems, and then how it works out into your life. So that, and it also talks about aspiring above to bring down into the practical world, the inspiration that you need. And that's what I love about these, is that there's lots of things that you have. And I'm just going to do the first couple here. The next symbol was the High Priestess. Very, very important. This is about decisions. Now, you'll see here, there's a white and a dark. So you've got a choice. Her crown is important. There's a lot of little symbologies that you can get into, but we have decisions, we have choices that we make that are very, very important. And it's like sometimes we have to move beyond, because there's the balance between the male and the female, the balance between the right and the left. How do we do? Now, the one thing I want to talk about with this is that I do a lot of number work with this. Number 2 is the high priestess. Number 11, which is the higher value of the two, is what we call the justice symbol. Now, just take a look at, oh, sorry, my arm's still a bit sore. So you take a look at this and then this. Both of these are 2s, and I don't have the other 2 up down here to look at. But you make a decision. What I found was a lot of people think that the decision is the main key, but it isn't. It is the actual doing. You can make a decision and don't do any action on it. So you need to commit to the decision, and then you can accept the outcome, which is number 20, the outcome of the decision. And I find that very often comes out for people. It was where they think because they've made a decision, that's it. But it isn't. It is the action, the commitment to the decision that is important. So the little things like that help. Now, the number 3 symbol is the Empress, which is love. Love binds everything together and it flourishes. Then love is again has a lot to do. That's number 3. And number 12, which is again 1 and 2 or 3, is acceptance, the law of acceptance. We must accept things as they are. Not everything is really, really great. And I'll tell you why. Because out of nowhere, as we have number 16 here, the Tower, the unexpected. Now, this particular symbol taught me a lot of things about handling life when life doesn't go the way you want it to. I'm just trying to see how out of nowhere comes the lightning, takes the top off. 2 people fall away. 1 person falls. I'm going to see if I can get the right ways, because 1 person over here by himself still has the cap held onto his head, and he's falling away from what we call the yards of light that take us up. The yards of light are the 22 steps, actually. I was going to say shit happens. Life happens. Sometimes, everything's going along really smoothly. You feel in control. Everything is working the way that you want. And then bang, something comes and it throws it away. And this is where we've got to be able to let go. Because one thing that the Tower taught me, if you hold on, you go away. And it's much, 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 much more difficult to get back. This is where, when we looked at the acceptance, comes in handy. You need to accept, now let go and see where you can land and rebuild. And you rebuild based on these 22 symbols of the higher arcana. You rebuild. You get to learn how to work with that and how to deal with that. Now, so to me, that comes up a lot for people. It's like we get blindsided by life. It's like we weren't expecting it, because we always expect the best. We want the best. We want everything to happen, and it doesn't always happen. And what will often happen I pulled out 2 symbols here relating to emotionality. Number 6 is the Lovers, and it's a lot of confusion. And it talks also about the need for alignment within all the different aspects of who we are and who ourselves are. But the higher value of this is number 16. Number 15, I think. Sorry, I got incorrect number. Is our devil symbol, which is our subconscious. Our subconscious is in control. And you'll notice the blackness of the back. It's totally black. The Tower has a black background, but it's lighter at the bottom. Because if you choose to work properly and get yourself out of that by acceptance. This is one of the things I find that most people forget, the acceptance of what's going on, so you can make an appropriate decision in the direction of where it's happening. Another thing, another pattern we see a lot of is about changing, about letting go. It happens originally in the number 7 of the chariot. Now it's number 7, first 7. I deal in the 7, 3 sevens plus the full. And so it's like having to let go. Sometimes we have to let go of something we don't really want to, but it's like it's come to an end and we've got to move forward. So in a way, I'm just going to show you that again because it's like he's not moving. He's procrastinating a bit, but he's got all the power there to move, to make changes. And this is the other change card that's really a lot because we got the tower, which is like, oh, bang. But this is the one where we have to be more like the hub of the wheel. We have to be in the center and allow life to move forward and allow life to go. And it's a knowledge. It's like we learn. It's not like maybe the odd person that comes into the into this life and there it all is and understands everything totally 100%. But the majority of us, we learn as we go along. And so that's where the Wheel of Fortune talks about is that we're learning. The 4 fixed signs are in the corners of that symbol have books because they're learning because things are changing. And also it has some metaphysical symbols on there which talk about Yodhi Vorhi and all the elements of moving in. So what do we really need, I think, is faith. Faith to move forward, faith to know that everything is in place, faith to go, and that the love vibration and the faith putting together, we create a balance. Now, the other thing with the lower arcana, we recognize that we have our mind, which to me is the background of what we are creating and what we're doing. We have the value, which is how we feel. And these two have to be balanced. So often people are all in their heads. We got to figure it all out. We got to sort it all out. Others are all in their emotions, feeling and feeling and feeling. But really the reality is to keep it balanced, to keep it all balanced so that it works. And that is number 22. That is the end where we have balance and we've overcome sort of the obstacles. Well, I think they keep going in certain ways, but we need often that tool. Like, what is your tool? What is it that you use? What is it that, excuse me, that brings about the knowledge? When I think about when I first went to hear Mr. Boulderstone, who was the gentleman, speak about what he had been doing and creating. And then my husband at the time and I, very young, both of us, went to have classes. I carried on. My ex, now deceased husband, was always into astrology more. And even though I studied astrology for 3 years, it wasn't me. And finally I came to the point, because I worked in an astrology bookstore, I realized that I was an intuitive, not what I often say is not a mental person. Which is not really true because but it's like I couldn't hold on to some of the astrology. Like it was all this learning where I could look at a card and I would get an impression and I would know where it was going and what it was. And the key was what I learned as the years went by. If you're going to read something like cards of any kind, is joining words. How do you make the story? You're making a story. When I just did a reading yesterday and here's a person's life in front of me. How do I make that story work? What are the joining words that you need to go from one symbol to the other, from one avenue of their life to another avenue of their life? How is that all come together? What is the big picture? What is needed here? What is missing? What is creating? Are they some people I read for are just so mental that it's very hard for them to get out of their heads, just absolutely, because they're trying to figure it all out. And very much the figuring it all out in your head is very much like being on a Ferris wheel going round and round and round and round. But the key is really is we want to balance that with how it feels. What is it you really, really are feeling? What is it that you're wanting to go, and where do you want to go, and how do you want to go? So it's like, what is your tool? What is it that you use to help you get through? I have lots of different other little tools, but the main one I use in my psychic work is my tarot. What I use personally is my tarot, and often I more because I know things so well, is that very often I just have to go inside and sort of ask, and I get the answers in some way, shape, or form. But if I'm really stuck, I will pull the cards out and read for myself for sure. And that is a question actually some people ask. Can you read for yourselves? Yes, but you've got to be objective. When you're reading for yourself, you've got to know that the objectivity is that you are able to separate and not get, or like, I don't like that answer, I don't want that. You want to be able to accept truth and know that everything is easy to change and bring into a perspective. So people need to find what's their, you might say, their tool of choice. Astrology wasn't mine. It was my husband's, it was my daughter's. They used astrology because they could remember it. I didn't seem to be able to remember everything. And even though I have a basic understanding of it, and to this day, was not my tool. And very often, sometimes people feel like something's wrong with them because they don't get it. They don't get how this works or that works. You got to find where you are. When I look back now, I know that I was an intuitive. I worked by feeling. I worked by, how does that work? How does it go? Then I was able to add that sense of making the story. What is the story here? And the key was, and that was never ever taught to me, I learned it, joining words, and, but, however, rather than, maybe, perhaps even, like whatever joins this section, this card to that card, this vibration to that vibration. How do you bridge that? Because that's the one thing with symbology, that it doesn't have like a direct bridge sometimes. But when you learn how to read the symbology, you can see how you can take that by using just plain old joining words, making it work. I always think of myself as a storyteller in a way, storyteller of life, storyteller of, and the good news is that the majority of people respond very well to what I have to say to them, because I'm not reading events. I'm not an event reader. I'm a psychological reader. I will tell you what the issue is. And if you do this, this will be the outcome. If you do that, that would be the outcome. Because at any given time, you make decisions and choices as to the direction that you're going to be moving in and creating and being. So it becomes important as to which way you want to go, how you want it to work. I love to pull cards. Actually, I haven't had a new deck for a lot of years now, and they're very like well used. And when I pick them up, into my hand, I'm in total contact with them. And sometimes, like yesterday, I was working on the transformation side of my world, but the lady my client wanted to know a couple of other things. So I just separate my cards and look at them. I got the answer, and we can go from there. But it's practice. Anything you're going to learn how to do, practice, 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 and work. And I read for myself every day for a long time, trying to figure out not only myself, but the vibration that I was working. Thoughts create your reality. That I always say, the thoughts are the framework. Yes, they are the framework, but it's the feelings that create the form of the framework. And I often use the analogy of building a house. When you do the framework of a house, that is the wands, that's your thinking pattern. But when you go to put the walls in, that's the feeling level. This is a feeling planet as far as I'm concerned. It's an emotional planet. And therefore, it's important to have these two elements balanced. If you're not in balance, then things go wacky, and things, and very often people, especially who are very tied into their mental, and there's a lot of reasons why that is so. Mostly is because most of us are on mental planets before we get here, the emotional one. And so it's like learning how to understand and pull those together. Anyway, I just thought today I would share a little bit of my journey with the tarot over the years, and I'm can't even ever envision giving up that tool. I've added many other things in more of the psychological thing, because the philosophy that you have is what's important. It's knowing the pathway. When you, my second book, exploring the patterns of the tarot, where we really lay out we might say, the steps. The third one was more like decision. Well, yeah, the third one was kind of putting a whole lot of other things together. But it's like, it's wonderful. In my basic book I wrote way back in '79, it's a very basic little book. The first and the third one are available on. You can download them. They still got some hard copies of the second one. Anyway, that's another story. But life is life. You sometimes need guidance. Even I sometimes sit down and say, okay, what's really going on now? Because I like to think I can figure it all out, but the truth and the reality is not always. Sometimes I have to sit down and take a look. What is the meaning of what's going on right now? What's happening? Where are we heading? What are we doing? So pick your tools, see what it is, and as I say, for me, it's the philosophical part of it that has been such a gem for where I am. So I trust that will help, and I thank you for listening. And we do have a comment today in the chat line. It says Maximiliano, I think I pronounced that correct. He says hello, and then he says, "Can I ask, please?" You can write it in here and tell me whatever it is you want to ask, because I will. But you got to be quick, because I don't. I'm not going to just wait around. Oops. I had water spray up in my face. So if you're still there and you can type in what it is you really want to ask, you can certainly ask, because that is the element. The main thing, if it's a psychic question, I usually answer those and deal with those on my Monday night show. Now I can't breathe and there's nothing coming through. So I'm going to say bye for now, and I shall see you Sunday for Sunday Thought, and Monday night for mental mind treatments. So I'm just seeing what card comes up, and it's one of the things I find that the hardest for people to do, accept things as they are. And acceptance is part of the love pattern. So we need to, acceptance is part of love. You have a great day. Enjoy. Bye for now.